Welcome to today's episode. We're diving into ICONIQ's latest annual growth report and what it reveals about the state of the tech investment landscape.
Right. And ICONIQ's reports always attract attention because of their unique position. They're not just investors, they're deeply embedded in Silicon Valley's ecosystem.
Absolutely. This year, the report seems to focus even more on the resilience of private tech companies, especially after the roller coaster we've seen in public markets.
It's interesting, isn't it? The public market volatility hasn't always translated directly into the private sector. ICONIQ's data shows some companies are still raising at impressive valuations.
That's true, but the report also notes a clear bifurcation. Top performers keep growing while others struggle to maintain momentum.
Exactly. It's like a tale of two cities in the tech world. Did you see the section on late-stage fundraising? The competition is fierce, but capital's flowing to proven winners.
And yet the report mentions that even these winners are facing increased scrutiny over profitability and efficiency. It's not just about growth at any cost anymore.
That's a big shift from a few years ago. Now VCs and LPs want to see clear paths to profitability. The days of grow now, figure out revenue later seem to be fading.
I liked how ICONIQ used real examples. For instance, they highlighted companies that pivoted to focus on core products, cut unnecessary spend, and saw their valuations stabilize.
And on the flip side, those that didn't adapt are finding it tough to raise capital. It's a wake-up call, really.
One stat that caught my eye: the median time between funding rounds has increased. Companies are stretching their runways, becoming more disciplined.
That discipline is probably a good thing. We've all heard horror stories of startups burning cash too quickly.
Remember that analogy in the report? They compared the new funding environment to running a marathon instead of a sprint.
I think that's spot on. Founders can't just rely on the next round to bail them out. They have to pace themselves and plan for the long haul.
The report also delves into sector trends. AI and cybersecurity are still hot, but fintech and e-commerce seem to be cooling off.
Makes sense, considering the hype around AI these days. Every investor wants a piece of the next big language model or automation tool.
But there's also a note of caution. ICONIQ warns about inflated valuations in emerging sectors, especially if the underlying tech hasn't matured.
That's a good point. Remember the crypto boom? A lot of capital poured in before the tech was ready, and we all saw how that ended.
True. The report draws parallels, suggesting investors should focus on fundamentals: team quality, product market fit, and sustainable growth.
I like the section about international expansion. It's not just U.S. companies getting the attention. ICONIQ highlights some breakout startups in Europe and Asia.
That's a shift from a few years ago when Silicon Valley was the main stage. Now, with remote work and global markets, talent and opportunity are everywhere.
But expanding internationally brings its own challenges: regulatory issues, cultural differences, and local competition.
ICONIQ points out that the most successful companies build local teams and adapt their products, rather than just exporting a U.S. model.
It reminds me of the story about that SaaS company that failed in Europe because they didn't localize their user interface.
Exactly. Small things can make a huge difference. The report's case studies show companies thriving by tailoring their approach.
There's also a section on secondary sales, which I found fascinating. More founders and employees are selling shares before IPO.
That trend's picking up. It gives early team members some liquidity, but it can also signal that insiders think growth may slow down.
Or maybe they just want to buy a house in San Francisco. Can you blame them?
Fair point. Real estate prices are probably scarier than any market correction.
The report also covers the LP perspective. A lot of limited partners are reevaluating their allocations, especially after the past year's volatility.
Yes, and ICONIQ's data shows that LPs are favoring funds with a strong track record, not just flashy new entrants.
Stability and trust count for a lot, especially when uncertainty is high. LPs want to know their capital's in good hands.
Another highlight: the rise of operator-led funds. ICONIQ mentions more former founders and execs starting investment vehicles.
That brings a different flavor to the table. Operators tend to have deep networks and practical experience, which can really help portfolio companies.
It's almost like we're seeing a new generation of investors, less traditional, more hands-on.
which is great for founders who need more than just a check. They want advice, intros, and someone who's been in the trenches.
The report's final section looks ahead, predicting continued uncertainty but also significant opportunities for those who adapt quickly.
The theme is clear: resilience, discipline, and adaptability. If you have those, you can weather almost any storm.
Do you think the current climate is weeding out weak companies, or is it just a temporary dip before another boom?
Maybe a bit of both. The strong will get stronger, but I wouldn't be surprised if we see a wave of innovation when the dust settles.
It's a classic cycle. Tight markets force creativity. Then, when capital returns, the next big thing emerges.
Yeah, necessity really is the mother of invention. Just look at how many unicorns were founded during downturns.
The report even references that. Some of today's biggest names came out of challenging times.
It's almost reassuring. Even when things look bleak, there's always potential for something new and exciting.
Of course, it's easier said than done. Pressure can make diamonds, but it can also crush you if you're not careful.
That's why support networks and mentorship matter. ICONIQ's report emphasizes the value of strong boards and advisors.
Right. In tough times, founders shouldn't go it alone. Having experienced voices around the table can make all the difference.
Speaking of support, the report also touches on mental health and burnout, an often overlooked aspect of startup life.
I appreciated that. It's refreshing to see investors acknowledge the human side, not just numbers and KPIs.
Founders are people too. Sometimes the best investment is in well-being, not just headcount or marketing.
And on that note, the report encourages a culture of transparency, both internally and with investors.
Trust is everything. When things go wrong, honest communication can save relationships and even companies.
So, if you had to pick one takeaway from ICONIQ's report, what would it be?
I'd say sustainable growth beats flashy metrics. Focus on building something real, not just chasing the next valuation bump.
I agree. It's about playing the long game, prioritizing quality, resilience, and adaptability over hype.
And for investors, patience and due diligence are more important than ever. The easy wins are gone, but the opportunities are still there.
For founders, it's a moment to reflect and recalibrate. Maybe the market's tough, but it's also full of possibilities for those who persist.
Exactly. And maybe, just maybe, this shakeout will set the stage for the next wave of iconic companies.
That's a hopeful note to end on. Thanks for joining us as we unpacked ICONIQ's annual growth report.
And for everyone listening, what's your take on the current tech landscape? Let us know and stay tuned for our next deep dive.